Yang berbahagia Tuan TS Muhammad Hamidi Muhammad Jaiz, Ketua Perpustakaan UiTM Cawangan Selangor, Yang Berusaha Encik Aisyad Bujang, Timbalan Ketua Pustakawan Kanan Pitar UiTM Kampus Puncak Alam, Yang Berusaha Profesor Madya Dr. Aida Maria Ismail, Koordinator Pengurusan Penyelidikan, para pensyarah, para pelajar, peserta webinar e-Open Day Pitar UiTM Cawangan Selangor bersama penerbit Scopus dan juga Web of Science yang saya kasihi sekalian, juga kepada Mr. Nicholas Park. Welcome to UiTM. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh dan juga selamat sejahtera. Pada hari ini Pitar UiTM Cawangan Selangor dan juga bahagian penyelidikan dan inovasi mengucapkan selamat datang ke webinar e-Open Day Pitar UCS bersama penerbit Scopus dan juga Web of Science. Jadi pada hari ini kedua-dua PTJ iaitu Pitar UiTM Cawangan Selangor dan juga Perpustakaan Tun Abdul Razak telah bekerjasama menganjurkan program bagi memberi pendedahan dan juga mempromosikan pengkalan data atas talian terutama bagi Scopus dan juga Web of Science melalui interaksi dan juga perhubungan mesra, telus dan cekap kepada pelanggan supaya kedua-dua kita panggil sebagai data atas talian yang ada iaitu Scopus dan Web of Science ini dapat diguna oleh pensyarah, penulis, penyelidik, para pelajar dengan lebih efisien ke arah kampus berorientasikan penyelidikan. Justru pada hari ini salah satu aktiviti yang dilaksanakan bagi memperkasakan aktiviti penyelidikan di UiTM Cawangan Selangor dan juga bagi kampus cawangan yang lain. Jadi pada hari ini tujuan aktiviti secara e-Open Day ini adalah untuk memberi pendedahan awal kepada pelajar baharu berkaitan perkhidmatan dan juga kemudahan yang disediakan oleh Perpustakaan UiTM Cawangan Selangor. Justru pada hari ini tujuan ataupun objektif utama adalah untuk memberi tunjuk ajar dan juga pendedahan kepada para penulis, kepada para penyelidik terutama ke arah kecemerlangan akademik untuk menggunakan pengkalan data Scopus dan juga pengkalan data Web of Science. Dan dalam masa yang sama diharapkan melalui e-Open Day ini semua pengguna pengkalan data akan dapat melakukan pendaftaran secara penulisan yang betul berkaitan dengan penerbitan di Scopus dan juga di Web of Science. Justru melalui program ini diharapkan semua yang hadir pada hari ini dapat menambahkan pengetahuan masing-masing dan juga bukan sekadar itu saja, mungkin pengalaman ke arah peningkatan citasi bagi hasil penulisan dan juga penyelidikan warga UiTM dan juga warga penyelidik secara keseluruhan dalam usaha menjadikan pusat kecemerlangan bagi akademik dan juga penyelidikan seterusnya ke arah pembudayaan ilmu yang berteraskan kepada teknologi yang kita kira sebagai satu kita panggil sebagai lubuk ilmu bagi semua rakan penyelidik supaya dapat mengakses, dapat menggunakan sepanjang kerjaya masing-masing dan juga sebagai bekalan ataupun kita jadikan sebagai platform untuk meningkatkan pendidikan sepanjang hayat. Oleh itu dengan lafaz, saya kira dengan lafaz Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, saya dengan ini merasmikan program e-Open Day Pitar UiTM Cawangan Selangor. Sekian, wabillahi taufik wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Technologist Dr. Asma Awal, Deputy Rector UITM Selangor Branch, for the opening remark for today's event. Now we will actually proceed to the main event, which is actually a session with Scopus. Before we start our session, let me introduce our speaker for today's session, Mr. Nicholas Park. He is actually the Senior Customer Consultant, Elsevier Research Solution. He is responsible for developing and fostering community engagement within the academic and government community in Southeast Asia. He strongly believes in leveraging on a consultative approach for a data-driven decision-making process within customer organizations. Without much further ado, can we actually invite Mr. Nicholas Park to start the session? The floor is yours, Mr. Nicholas.
Thank you very much, Professor Madhya and Professor Asma. Thank you very much for having me today over at UITM. Give me a second. I will share my screen with you. And it's my first time using StreamYard, so let me know if you're able to see my screen. Does it work? Great. All right. A very good morning to all, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for having me here over at UITM digitally today. My name is Nicholas, and I'm the Senior Customer Consultant over at Elsevier. I've been with here for approximately about 7 years, and over this 7 years, we've been working very closely with UITM throughout. So in today's session, what I'll be talking about will be discussing with you the content that is on Scopus. I want to share with you on how you can identify which journals are on Scopus, how you'll be able to search on it. We'll be talking about author profiles on Scopus, Scopus journal metrics, as well as Scopus article level metrics. So firstly, let's talk about the quality of journals on Scopus and also correspondingly about the content that we have. Before we go on, it's very important that I introduce to you that Scopus is the world's largest abstract and indexing database. It allows you to do powerful search, to search for author profiles, to leverage on research metrics, to extract data through APIs, and to provision you with structured data to help you progress, evaluate, and to reflect your institution's research activity. There are 6 key ways of using Scopus. For you to access journal, article, and author metrics, for you to look into researcher profiles, for you to delve deeper into organizational profiles, for instance, like what is UITM's research profile like. We use and we leverage on the content selection and advisory board's expertise to curate trusted content. We provision a very methodical, structured search and in-product analytics, as well as provisioning data exports through APIs. How we are able to achieve all this is because we leverage very strongly on data sets, such as publication data from over 7,000 publishers in 105 countries, from funding data from over 7 patent offices, PlumX metrics, so you're able to have article level data, preprint server data, Medline data, as well as unpaywall data. But it's not just only data sets that we are working on. We are leveraging on technologies such as big data, machine learning, natural language processing, semantic technology, entity resolution, as well as advanced data science. All this come together and culminate in over about 85 million items, about 94,000 organizational profiles, 17 million researcher profiles, and this really ranges because we are able to index about 11,000 articles per day. What Scopus wants to do, and the key few users, is that we want to help researchers as well as end users to progress your research. for you to be able to evaluate your research as well as your peers and to reflect your research. We are able to enable this by supporting you with intuitive powerful search methods with trusted and comprehensive content so that you're able to obtain insights to help you to progress your research with confidence. With data which is disambiguated and connected to key research entities, we provision you with insights for comprehensive evaluations which you can trust. There is very accurate reflections in terms of your research entities, which is structured in linked flexible data, and this is built to scale so that you can integrate and hone to meet your most stringent demands and highest value decisions. And all this is used throughout the entire scope by librarians, students, faculties and researchers, editors, research officers. So what Scopus wants to do is to support researchers across their careers, from students all the way through to advanced researchers, instructors, faculty, editors, as well as team leads to provide trusted content profiles as well as intuitive access. We want to be able to do this by conducting powerful search, filters, and refinement to surface insights within researcher workflows. To provision researcher profiles to support the researchers so that you're able to power researcher networks and to advance careers. We also want to support organizational profiles to surface expertise and to inform them in terms of analysis. And all this is through a curated, multidisciplinary, current and global content to inspire confidence. And one thing which we constantly do is that we want to make sure that we're always able to improve on our speed and the ease of use so that the community is able to leverage on this better. We want to improve on signals around research. And this is something which you hear me talk about today a couple of times, which is about research signals, right? And you'll be asking me, what is research signals? This is something I'll go through in more detail as we go along. We want to make sure that at the end of the day, the community is able to conduct discovery and analysis through the best possible way. So we want to leverage this and power this through intuitive, powerful search, trusted content, as well as comprehensive content, providing you with different insights so that you're able to progress your research. We want to inform evidence-based researcher and organizational evaluations by helping the faculty, team leads, librarians, as well as administrators to populate reports, assessments, and analysis with ease and confidence. And how we are able to do this? I mentioned earlier the Content Selection Advisory Board. They curate data set of sources with strict reassessment policies. We provision and we support the research landscape with analysis that inform policies for organizational hierarchies. In Malaysia, we work very closely with the Malaysian Research Assessment Board by provisioning them and structuring the content. We support disambiguation technology for author and organizational names, as well as setting targets for completeness and correctness to continuously improve. Across the entire intuitive platform, we support trusted content and robust search, as well as analytics to help your community to progress and to evaluate research activity. In terms of teaching next generation researchers, in terms of supporting career growth as well as development, to help research thrive, right? By helping researchers, students, and faculty teams to progress research confidently on a platform that constantly evolves. One of the key things that we actually do is to support the scholarly record. And by helping over 7,000 publishers, as well as their editors, to identify and to streamline journal strategy, to find reviewers, to develop special issues with best-in-class journal benchmarking tools. By supporting them by showcasing trusted researcher profiles and a breadth of journal as well as article level metrics. This is where I want to talk to you about how we can signal researcher impact, because we are able to showcase a comprehensive view of researcher output as well as engagement. So we are able to support responsible, transparent evaluation using an array of journal, article, as well as researcher level metrics. Where we are able to support and where we collaborate very closely with goal ranking organizational bodies such as Times Higher Education, as well as QS University rankings, is that we provide them with access and the use of metadata and metrics to support their internal systems with high quality authoritative research information to increase efficiency as well as to provide stakeholder confidence in the data. So Scopus really enables better decision making throughout all this through the framework for evaluation, through publication and usage metrics, through a global view of trusted sources of dissemination, as well as quality in terms of local journals. We talk about how fundamental the data is, right? And how the data sourced to us by over 7,000 publishers from over 18 million journals allow us to generate over 1.7 billion references, which can then be grouped under recordings, under records, under author profiles, under affiliation profiles. So we have very, very strong setup over all these different levels. We can see how the data fits into it, and then it's actually split into all these categories so that you as a user are able to access all of this information. So it's not only just Scopus.com, right, that most of you will be familiar with. You're probably also aware that we have Scopus author profiles, we have Scopus research metrics, Scopus APIs, as well as custom data, which is the one that we provide to organizational bodies. How we actually want to do this is to constantly curate this content. We want to go back and link the data and metrics to support you with continuous improvement and to support you via consultative support. So what we have enriched in 2021 and 2022, we have been working on Scopus author profile pages more strongly than ever before. The Scopus author feedback wizard, where you're able to improve the workflow so that it's easier for you than before to make changes to the author profile. We have updated the document detail page as well as research metrics, so you probably feel that the view is a bit different. There is more preprint content in the author profile page. We support you with increased number of articles containing funding data, as well as open access filters for over 17 million documents to date. So open access content is easier to locate as well as to analyze. I mentioned QS University rankings as well as Times Higher Education. We of course work together with Shanghai Jiaotong. Over in Asia Pacific, we work with Thailand Citation Index over in Thailand, the National Research Fund in Korea, Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. In Malaysia, we work together with the Malaysian Citation Center to support you with access to Scopus, right? So MCC supports the entire of the Ministry of Higher Education in Malaysia supports with the 20 public universities with access to Scopus. And this is a very good way to leverage on to be able to use Scopus in a strong way to support your entire research profile and landscape. And this is where I'll be talking about today in more sufficient detail. What I want to emphasize is that in terms of a global representation, we can find that Asia Pacific has about 2,200 journals indexed within Scopus, and Malaysia has approximately over 100 journals indexed within. So this 2,230 is about 265% more than our nearest competitor. You would have heard me mention about the Content Selection and Advisory Board. This is really an independent board of subject experts from all over the world, which is comprised of 17 subject chairs, and they are chosen for their expertise in specific subject areas, many of whom which have very strong journal editor experience. People tend to ask us, why is it that we have a selection and why is it that we have a re-evaluation process? And this is because we want to set up a rigorous and transparent quality and ethics selection criteria, which is used to evaluate potential titles. As a result, we regularly re-evaluate Scopus content and we discontinue titles which are no longer meeting the guidelines. For instance, between 2016 and 2020, we have removed approximately about 536 titles. A very normal workflow and process would be that 3,500 journal titles are suggested to us every single year on average. 40% would meet about almost 39% would meet the Scopus minimum criteria. 46% will be accepted after the content selection and advisory board's review, which is approximately about 630 titles that we met and indexed. So the reason why people will be asking us, why is it that we're so stringent about it? Why is it that only 1/6 titles are accepted? The answer is simple. It's because we don't just want to allow any journal that is applying to us to be indexed on Scopus without a very thorough review, right? We want to make sure that the journal is of a certain quality and standard before it can be indexed. So what is it that the indexing criteria? That is another question that I get asked very often. So all titles need to fulfill this 5 minimum technical criteria first in order to be considered for Scopus review. It needs to be peer reviewed. It needs to have an English abstract. It needs to be published regularly. There needs to be a Roman script references, as well as a publication ethics statement. It's only upon this 5 criteria that can be put in before it would then be submitted over to the Content Selection and Advisory Board to be reviewed based on this 14 criteria in terms of journal policy, the quality of content, journal standing, publication regularity, as well as online availability. Journal policy refers to the types of peer review, the types of editorial concept and policy, as well as the geographic distribution of authors as well as editors. Content reflects the academic contribution to the field. It showcases the clarity of abstracts, the readability of articles, and how strongly it conforms with the stated aims and scope of the journal. The journal standing refers to the citedness in terms of journal articles in Scopus, as well as the standing of the editor. Publication regularity showcases that there cannot be any delay in terms of the publication schedule, and of course, it has to be available online. The journal can be published in its own local language, but it needs to have an English language journal homepage, which is clear and accessible, and also available online. So one thing Scopus is committed to doing is to showcase and to create a representative, curated data set of scholarly content based on journal level data and performance, and we constantly monitor and deselect titles which are predatory and below standards. But the one thing that we cannot do is to intervene with the editorial autonomy of journals. We cannot interfere with editorial decisions on the quality of individual articles and conferences. We cannot intervene in terms of the scientific content of the articles and the abstracts which are included in the database. We cannot plagiarize, obviously. We cannot interfere in terms of plagiarism and other publication malpractice of individual articles, nor can we step in to interfere at the authorship of the paper. The answer is simple. Scopus works together with the publishers of the journal, right? But we cannot work together with the editor level of the journal, nor can we manage the individual journal itself, because this is something beyond the scope of where we can step into, right? But what we can do is that we can constantly monitor the journal, and if the journal has numerous publication malpractice, which is of concern, we will simply stop to index them, right? And to stop their forward flow. Of course, sometimes people will be asking, this journal doesn't have many citations, so why is it still within Scopus? Answer is simple, because these journals may have lower than average performance, but they could still be of relevance to be covered in Scopus, for instance, such as niche journals, where journals published in the journals could be of high quality, and therefore these journals should not have to be removed from Scopus because the content that they have contributed will be able to advance science. The one thing that we do is to notice that predatory journals, they are definitely a threat to science, and they should definitely be avoided to be covered in Scopus. So journals that are included in Scopus would benefit from wider global visibility, which would then increase its impact and quality. And sometimes this doesn't happen, and the journal may also become predatory over time. When making decisions about research, it's essential that the decisions are based on data that we can trust, and therefore predatory journals are a threat to the integrity of Scopus and science in general. One of the challenges that we have faced is that predatory publishing is ill-defined and subject to personal interpretation, and the independent review of individual journals by academic subject experts, such as a CSAB, in each field is absolutely essential. Something which we want to showcase to you here, I wanted to showcase to you here, is to talk about the overall title review process. We can see how, from a publisher, editor, librarian standpoint, you can submit a journal over to us. This is what we call the title suggestion form. It needs to fulfill the minimum criteria check that I showcased to you earlier. And if it's not accepted, if it's rejected, then what will happen is that we will send you a feedback letter on how you can improve the overall journal better. But then there will be placed on an embargo period for anywhere from 3 to 5 years. The answer is simple. Our CSAB team have a finite amount of time to review a journal, and what we don't want people to do is to constantly send us their journals every single year before having really made improvements to it. So we want to make sure that the journals are of a sufficient enough standard so that publishers are confident of submitting the journal over to us to be indexed, right? And it's only when the minimum criteria is met that we provision with a publisher enrichment form to enrich the title so that it can be selected by the local board. This is then released to the Content Selection and Advisory Board for their review, where the subject chair will take a look at it. We will subject and comment with feedback to the suggester and the publisher before Scopus decides to index it or to unindex it. So what we do is to provide a very transparent annual re-evaluation process to ensure that titles will be able to meet quality standards that we have established for ourselves. So we can see that what happens is that in the first year, if we notice that journals are underperforming, we will flag it and we will let journal publishers know, right? And we will analyze this using their performance based on metrics as well as benchmarks. If for the second year it happens again, we will flag it again. And if the journal underperforms for 2 consecutive years, we will then reevaluate the title based on the selection criteria in the first place. And this is where we decide to either continue with the forward flow or we discontinue the forward flow. So this is what happens when sometimes you find that the journals on Scopus will suddenly be discontinued. The reason is because the journal's forward flow has been stopped. But then because it's already been indexed in Scopus, right? You find that the research content is still archived within Scopus itself, because during those periods of time, the journal is of a good enough quality to be set to be indexed in Scopus, and we want to maintain the record for posterity. So the other thing is that discontinued titles are broken down by reason of identification. We can see that some of the key things will be publication concerns in terms of underperformance, in terms of outlier performance, and in terms of continuous curation. And we can see these are numbers of titles which are discontinued. So how do you identify which journals are in Scopus? And that's a very common question which I get. My favorite answer is to point you towards the Scopus source list, right? If you go to the top right corner, you'll be able to see all these functions over here. Select on sources. Once over here, you can download the Scopus source list. You'll be able to see individually which journal titles have been discontinued, as well as which ones are currently active. So this source list is updated on a monthly basis. I highly encourage you to take a look at it this way to make sure that you have the updated journal list that you maybe want to take a look at. So for some journals which have been discontinued, right? For all the journals for which the journal has been made to discontinue, the publisher is informed of the decision by the Scopus team. No new content is added to Scopus, except for journals that are flagged because of publication concerns, and these journals are put on hold during the review process. As mentioned earlier, content that has already been indexed remains as a matter of scientific record to ensure the stability and consistency of research analytics. But in exceptional cases of proven severe unethical publication practice, content indexed in Scopus may then be removed. And this aside score will not be given for discontinued titles. Another way you may want to access it is to take a look at, go to elsevier.com. Under Scopus and how Scopus works, you can basically browse through it for the content. So there are multiple ways to access the source list itself. So most of the time, people will be asking me, hey, Nicholas, if I want to find a journal to publish in, what's the best way for you to do so? And my encouragement is actually to leverage on Scopus as well as the following framework, which I can showcase to you. I will always point you towards asking your colleagues and your peers for their recommendations. For those that you trust, you can gain insights from the supervisor, mentor, as well as the authors that you have read, or you can book a consultation with a UITM librarian. You can look at the articles where you have cited and where they were published in. Note the journal's reference in the bibliography of key papers within your field, and to search for authors in your field and to discover where they are publishing. And then I will always encourage you to start with the end in mind. So you need to ask yourself, what is the manuscript format that you're looking at to publish in? If you need to publish open access, if you're seeking to publish a title with a multi and interdisciplinary focus, if there is a publisher that you trust and you want to publish with, such as, for instance, Elsevier, or if you're publishing the research data as well as other outputs alongside the article itself. So ask yourself, is a manuscript the right fit for the journal? If there are institutional mandates to consider, is the journal visible in the research community that you want to reach out to? Is there a high chance of acceptance? Ask yourself, is this journal indexed in, say, Scopus or Web of Science? Because this is very important for Myra, right, in terms of assessment. So you need to make sure that at the end of the day, the journal is indeed indexed within Myra, so that it would help you and help your overall performance as a researcher. Ask yourself, what is it that the journal metrics will review? And if the journal is a reputable, which practices robust peer review. So this is the part that now we start delving into Scopus, because now you understand how it works as an abstract indexing database, how you can trust the content that you're looking at. So I will always encourage you to look into search, right? And ask, what is it that you're trying to do, right? There's a question that you want to achieve. It's an interactive process. The information is locked in the content, and this is the way that you want to start looking at. Are you applying for an unexplored research area? Or are you searching for, say, an expert person or institution in your field? Are you looking to keep up to date on the research area? And if so, what are the key search terms that you should be trying to look at and to understand? Sometimes you're writing a paper and you're collecting references. Sometimes some of you may be applying for research funding as well, right? There will be different purposes and caches that you're looking for to achieve. So please, you need to identify what is it that you're looking for as well. So in terms of search functionality, I will always encourage you to use specific search terms that are closely related to your research topic. You may try and include alternate words and abbreviations, but I will always say, please avoid words that are too general. In this case, you can use Boolean operators and, or, and not. The and operator allows you to find documents which contains all of the terms, and you can use it when the terms must appear and may be far apart from one another. So if you're looking for, say, a programmable logic controller and elevator. Or allows you to expand your search parameters to find documents which contains any of the terms. You use or when one of the terms must appear, such as synonyms, alternate spellings, or abbreviations, such as a micromouse or a picomouse. So and it's in a way allows you to narrow your search parameters, because by having more variables, you're making it the article and the research content that you're looking for more specific. Or allows you to expand your search parameters because you're including more options and variables. The Endnote Operator is an exclusion tool which excludes documents from the specific term from the search. You use Endnote when at the end of a search, when you're looking for, say, a micromouse or a picomouse and not a rodent. So if you don't specify anything between two words, Scopus will join them with and the words may not necessarily be together, right? So sometimes what you want to do is you may want to put it in double quotation marks. Because if you're looking for, say, N in the title abstract keywords for conversion disorder, you can find a document with disorders of vision in the title and image conversion in the keywords. But if you're looking for the phrase itself, right, then put them in the double quotation marks so that you're looking for conversion disorder specifically. If you just type in anything, then what happens is that you get basically a normal search itself. If you're looking finding words close to one another, we have proximity operators such as preceding and within. Preceding means the first word must not be more than n integers away, words away from the second, and within doesn't mean which word is first. So example would be Zika preceding to virus would find Zika or dengue virus as well as the Zika virus. Within to virus will allow you to find virus infections with Zika or virus like Zika or virus and Zika. Sometimes you can miss just Zika virus, but it's much more precise than Zika and virus. So what Scopus also does is to correct, not correct, but allows you to search for accented characters like Dvorak or Vorak. You don't need to type in this specific word itself. It lemmatizes it. So what happens is you don't need to type attack and attacks separately. They are the same word. Omega sign and omega will be the same. Behavior and behavior is the same. Punctuation will be ignored. And words like the, it, of are excluded from the search, right? Unless you override them specifically with the exact phrase. So I wanted to give you time to run through an exercise, but I don't think we have time now. But basically, this is actually how you can leverage on wildcard operators, such as question marks and asterisks, together with the Boolean operators that I've showcased to you to be able to do a much more impactful and effective search when you're looking for research papers. One example that you can do is to also search it, and when you do the search for, say, COVID-19, you'll be able to come up with a huge list of document results that you can take a look at. So one way you can do it is to search for COVID-19 under abstract title, article title, abstract, and keywords. And there are many different parameters that we allow you to do so. Select it. You can choose a search field and you can delve into it into greater detail, including the date of range of publication, when it's included within Scopus, etc. So one thing which I want to highly emphasize on is that Scopus does not contain full text. Rather, what it does is it gives you the abstracts, right? You'll be able to see the title, the author information, as well as the institution. You'll be able to see the abstract that people what the research is about. You'll be able to see the author keywords, the index keywords, the funding details, etc. So one way you can do so, for instance, if you want to refine your search using a specific field like an author name, you can just add a box with the add search field. And you can add as many as you like, and you can join them with the different Boolean operators. You can even use the or and in the same box as well if you want to. You can also search for authors within a research area by searching for COVID-19 and then looking for an author which is called Professor Huang, right? This is one way that you may want to do so as well. One thing which we do is that once you have performed a search via the search form, it's automatically recorded in the search history that you can see over here. So you can access this quickly and promptly than ever before. And you're actually able to refine the results as well, right? In terms of a year perspective. And then I want to bring your attention over here. You can see under access type, source title, year, author name, publication stage, affiliation, subject area, source type, keyword, funding sponsor, document type, language, country as territory, country and territory. So over here, you can refine these results in this multiple areas so that you're actually able to get a much more specific area of research that you're delving into. I really like this because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So it allows, this whole area allows you to refine the area of research that you're looking for as well. You'll be able to find out details of author profiles when you select it, and there'll be a pop-up preview for you as well. I like this. So you'll be able to look specifically for which author you're looking for. You can either zoom in, include, or to exclude an author to exclude publications from search as well. And under the sorting option, you can sort it by the date cited by, the first author, or by the source title as well. I like one of the key features that we have included recently would be to allowing you to select abstract so that you're actually able to read about the abstracts, about the articles, rather than have to go into the abstract itself. This actually just saves you more time and efficiency. You're able to select all these documents as well. So you can choose to either export it, download it, or to view the citation overview, or you can also analyze search results. I'll be doing a live version of this later, so don't worry. And I'll show you how all this comes together and you can improve on the entire workflow approach. You can also choose to select and to view references and to create a bibliography. So most of you who will be leveraging and be using Scopus, you probably will have to write a research paper at some point in time. In this case, you'll be asking, I need to leverage on a reference manager so that I don't need to write my citations, line by line, word by word. And there is Mendeley, which is provisioned to you for free by Elsevier. And you can just go to mendeley.com, and it's a very powerful reference manager. You can also leverage on Endnote as well, right? But to do so, you still need to actually view all this as to download the references and to create a bibliography. Scopus allows you to access this quickly and promptly and very painlessly. Okay, so I've talked a fair bit about this, right? But what I want to do now is I want to create a live version of what we're talking about. So just give me one quick second. I'll open a new window. And I want to share my screen. So let me know when you're actually able to see my screen as I access scopus.com.
Yeah, we can see your screen now.
Okay, great. So for instance, right, let's talk about COVID-19. Well, let's talk even about monkeypox, right? Because that's the latest area of research that we are probably interested in. So I want to take a look quickly at monkeypox, and I can see there's approximately about 1,200 document results. But let's actually bring it down to the past couple of years, right? Because I don't want to know the full history of it. So I'm going to filter this out by 2021 and 2022. I can limit it to this 3 years, right? And over here, we can find that there's what the default option would probably be is cited by highest. But let's take a look at the latest research, right? And then we can see over here, we have a whole bunch of categories that you can take a quick look at in terms of emerging infectious diseases, including this one that's imported from Maryland, USA in 2021. This was published very recently in 2022. We can see exportation of monkeypox virus from the African continent, etc., so on and forth, right? But let's take a look at like the highest, cited by highest, so that we can find out what this area of research is about. You'll be able to find that over here, you have access to open access to the years of publication, different type of authors, and we can see that there's a Professor Ihe Kweboyazu with about 7 articles published here. So maybe this is someone that this may be a person of interest that you may want to take a look at. We are able to find out which subject category it is, whether or not it's been fully published, the type of articles, the source title, the keywords, the affiliation, and the funding sponsor. Funding sponsor is something very unique. I understand that within Malaysia, most of the time, there's always questions about how do we get funding for our research. So if you notice that in your research category, there's a very strong funding sponsor, maybe that's someone that you may want to collaborate with and to work with as well to get funding for your research, right? So we have many different options that you can take a look at. Opening this up in a new tab, I want to showcase to you that this is actually essentially this seems like it's a short survey, right? Published in the journal Trends in Parasitology, and then this is what we call illegal wildlife trade. We can see that the researchers comes from the Department of Veterinary Medicine from the University of Bari in Italy. It's a collaborative research together with Western Australia, with Murdoch University, with the Agu Magales Institute, as well as the Bu Ali Sina University over in Iran, right? We can see over here the abstract, the keywords, the index keywords. Something very new is we've built in the Sustainable Development Goals 2021, so that based on a research abstract keywords, we are able to tag accordingly what is the Sustainable Development Goals mapped to this document itself. We can see what topics it falls under. In this case, it's a One Health initiative, zoonosis, as well as communicable disease. Topics is something I'll talk about in more detail as we go along my presentation. And we can see along here, there are a whole bunch of metrics that I'll also be talking about. But I want to bring to your attention the fact that this is ranked 98th percentile citations in Scopus. It is a few weighted citation impact of 9.53. So some of you will be asking me, what is FWCI, right? And what happens is that in Scopus, what we do is that we compare an article, we compare its overall citation performance with other research topics in the same, with other papers in the same specific research topics. Because what we do want to do is to compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges, right? One is the global average. So the fact that this is 9.53 showcases that this is significantly higher than the global average itself. We can see all this information, including view counts and PlumX metrics, and this is something I'll also be talking about in more detail as we proceed. We are able to see the number of times it's been cited, so i.e. which documents are actually citing this research, and we can see what are the related documents pertaining to this area of research as well, right? So it's very, very comprehensive. This is what we call like forward linking forward, as well as backward linking and exploring the citation chain, which I'll go about through in more detail subsequently. On the other hand, let's take a quick look at this other journal research paper that we that I've opened. So we notice that this is 29 citations and is ranked in the 98th percentile. This one has 16 citations and is ranked in the 68th percentile. Let's take a quick look at the several topics, and we realize that this one falls under influenza virus, under human influenza, right? It's slightly different because this one is a systematic review of viral diseases in Africa in light of the One Health concept. So the approach, while there may be very similar keywords, it might not exactly be the same category, right? So it's very important to identify the area of parameters of research. And we notice that the number of citations may be similar-ish, but the benchmarking is completely different. And we can see that over here, the field weighted citation impact is 0.85. It's nowhere as high as the 9 from the previous article, right? So not all citations are equal when we can see and we can take a quick look accordingly. So I want to go back to search again, and there's another one part that I want to bring your attention to, and that is under advanced document search, which I select to over here. So the first thing you can see very clearly is that there is a lot of field codes, right? So I can select all this over here, and what I notice and what I can share with you is that there's approximately about 62 field codes, which is very, very significant. And some of you be asking, why is there so many field codes? And the answer is simple, because whenever one abstract is indexed in Scopus, it is broken down into all of these sub categories, right? And this is how we are actually able to build up the Scopus database so accurately, because we go and break down the information that we received into all these levels of granularity before we actually are able to build up the database upwards itself. Over here, you can enter the queries that you want to. You can add in the operators that I mentioned, and or and not, preceding as well as within, and then you can outline the query, and then this is a way for you to be able to structure a much more advanced search for the topic that you are interested in as well, right? Structuring it in this way really gives you a much more clearer picture. So you notice just now under when I was refining the search, I was able to refine approximately about 1,100 documents to 112 documents using this very specific keyword itself, right? So now I don't need to constantly refresh it. I can just simply leverage on my search history, and it will just bring me back quickly to the information that I was looking at just a couple of minutes ago. So this is really the power of search over at Scopus. We really want you to be able to leverage all this information so that you're actually able to acquire the data that you like to receive. So you can also select view the references and to even create a bibliography as well, right? And this, you can simply export this accordingly by the citation style that you're looking for too. So all these functionalities are actually available as mentioned. So I'm going to stop sharing this window and to share and to go back to the presentation that we were discussing about earlier.
Mr. Nicholas,
Yeah,
I would. That's actually a question from the participant. Maybe I can actually read the question at the end of the session.
sure. I think let's take it at the end of the session itself. We have approximately about 30 minutes to go, and there's a bit more that I would like to cover as well.
Okay.
Thank you. So I mentioned earlier about the overall citation chain, right? We talk about metrics quickly, and we talk about how citations works. So we can follow the citation chain forwards in time by taking a look at viewing who have cited these articles. So in this case, we are able to select it forward, and then we can find out these are the other articles that have been citing this research. We can also view it backwards by viewing the references, right? Which are the references that have led to the completion and construction of this research article. So this really gives you a good understanding, like by going forward and backward, what are the key research areas and topics, or what are new topics and trends that this research article has basically led to, right? What are the new discoveries that we are talking about? You can even go by sideways when you select it by related documents, right? And this is really a good way for you to explore relevant content within the topic that you're interested in. So we talk about quickly about what other functionalities that you can. You can also create a saved list so that you can take a look at this research article at the end of the day. But one thing I would encourage you all to do first is to create a profile on Scopus. If you don't have a login yet, please feel free to create one. It's actually very simple. For those of you with Science Direct, you can use the same login as well, right? And just makes your life very easy. By looking at the saved list, this is something that you can access to very often and frequently. You may also even want to set an alert for your searches on a weekly, fortnightly, monthly basis. So the other quick thing that I want to talk about, right, because I only have approximately like 30 minutes, and there's more information that I want to walk through with you. You roughly know that what we are able to see when you're searching on Scopus and how you're actually able to search for it in a much more efficient manner. But let's talk about author profile. So author profiles is a very unique thing. The Scopus author identifier uses what we call an algorithmic data processing to group papers to an individual's profile based on their name, their emails, their affiliations, their subject areas, their citations, and their co-authors. The feedback wizard is also available for you to make changes, right? Because we know that Scopus, even though it's mostly accurate, it's not 100% accurate all the time. And in during this time, what we want to do is to support our researchers with the ability to make corrections to the profile when necessary. Sometimes it happens because there'll be names which are very common. There'll be name changes. We might not get incomplete complete metadata from the publishers itself, right? So all this matters. So for instance, if I look for Professor Anthony Fauci, I can key in his last name, right? And actually, first and foremost, you can start searching for authors by going to search, selecting the second tab over here under authors, or you can put in the ORCID ID and you'll be able to see the author profile here. This is really interesting. The author profile showcases the name, the institution, the history of publication of the author. You'll be able to see the number of documents that this researcher has produced, the H index, the document and the citation trends, as well as the topics which he or she has contributed, as well as more information, right? So Professor Fauci is clearly, he's from the NIAID in America. He has approximately about 1,174 documents with a H index of 178, right? And his area of research primarily comes from HIV vaccines, HIV infections, as well as the Ebola hemorrhagic fever, right? Ebola virus. These are the most commonly contributed topics within that he has contributed to. I think this is actually very interesting and powerful, right? So what you're able to do with the author profile is that not only are you able to identify your own author profile, you're also able to follow other researchers' profiles that you may be keen on, right? You want to see, are these researchers producing research that I may want to collaborate with? Are they producing research which is of an increasing trend? Are these topics something that I can offer my expertise to? And then does this allow me to collaborate, right? So this author profiles are a very good way for you to identify how well you're performing and as well as potential opportunities for network. So I mentioned about the author profile wizard, right? And if there are any profiles with any errors with your profile, it's very simple for you to just request for an edit here. You can select edit profile. You'll be able to set your preferred name. You are able to merge profiles, add and to remove documents, to update affiliation and to add a new feature, right? So this is actually a very straightforward process. You can do it. Yeah, you don't need to worry about it all the time, right? So if you find that there's missing in documents, feel free to make these changes. We'll be able to actually search for documents within Scopus itself, right? And under the search itself, you can prompt in the document. The document will showcase with you information about the document, including the author. So it's very obvious when you're adding someone else's documents. If you ever do so, never ever do that, right? Because it's very easy for us to identify whether or not this document belongs to you based on the author contribution. But if you find that there is a document which is missing, you can flag it over to Scopus or you can flag it to the publisher. The publisher should have and should be able to index your article over the Scopus, especially if the journal is indexed already. Earlier, I mentioned about the H index score, right? And this is a standard scholarly metric in which the numbers of published papers and the number of times the author is cited is put into relation. And this is based on the minimum number of papers that have been cited compared to those that have not been cited as much. So in this case, Professor Fauci has a H index of 178 because he has 178 publications that be cited at least 178 times, right? The articles that are not yet reached 178 citations are not added to the count. So this is really kind of like a median distribution. So earlier I talked about topic pages, and topic pages I think is really useful and impressive because they are really a collection of documents with a common focus intellectual interest. And Scopus publications are clustered into topics based on a direct citation analysis. So topics also allow, when you delve into topics, you're able to identify research trends as well. So go into it, take a quick look about this, right? you'll be able to see the segregation and the breakdown in terms of what topics this researcher has contributed to, what are the number of documents, and what is actually the field-weighted citation impact of this topic. I mentioned FWCI earlier with regards to an article. FWCI also applies to topics as well, right? And like I mentioned earlier, 1 is the average. So anything higher than 1 showcases that this researcher has really contributed to the field that he or she is in, right? So you can learn more about topics that you may not have previously known, and you can explore them in greater depth and detail when you select it. And then it will showcase as well more information about this topic that you can really educate yourself on. You may even want to take a look at Professor Fwci's co-authors, right? Because these are people that you may want to work with as well, right? Especially if you find that what they're producing is of particular interest. So where all this comes together is that Scopus really author profile really helps to support career growth as well as development. With all this information and metrics that we have talked about, it helps researchers to discover, enhance, and to benefit from their researcher profile, which is created with an authoritative information and expert linking, bolstered by metrics as well as analysis. You're able to identify potential collaborators and mentors with the citation views, save lists, alerts, and robust author analysis. And now you can map the career trajectories of few leaders to inform your own goals on how you want to pursue and to develop your own research pathway. This really gives you information about research usage and impact with an array of document and author level metrics and indicators to inform funding, collaboration, publication, assessment, as well as career development strategies. So you can metric all these metrics, right, is a great way for you to demonstrate not only your impact, but your institution's research impact, right? And the more varied and transparent the metrics are, the more richer and robust the story is. So the good thing and the beautiful thing about Scopus is that there's a very strong emphasis in terms of research metrics, more than any other abstract and citation database. And the reason is simple, because we don't just believe in just one single metric, we really believe in a basket of metrics itself. So let's talk about journal metrics within Scopus. And I want to highlight to you the three key metrics that we are looking at under site score, under the source normalized impact per paper, as well as the SCImago journal ranking. So SiteScore was developed by Scopus, by Elsevier, and it gives a very comprehensive, transparent, and current view of a journal's impact. It leverages on a 4-year citation window, is calculated using data from Scopus, and it helps to validate citations received by journals and proceedings. SNP is what we call a source normalized impact per paper. It measures contextual citations by weighting citations based on the total number of citations in a subject field. And the impact of a single citation is given higher value in subject areas where citations are less likely. Some of you may find that this is quite similar to FWCI. It is and it isn't, because SNP is a journal level metric, right? FWCI, you can use it at the article level or topical level. SCImago Journal Rank is developed by SCImago Labs over in Spain, and this is what we call a prestige metric, which is applied to journals, book series, as well as conference proceedings. And this have a direct effect on the value of a citation, and once again, it's a score scale of 1 for easy comparison. I mentioned earlier that there's a huge load of metrics, right, that we have observed on Scopus. We have seen the document count metric and the H index at a researcher level. At an article level, we have talked about citation count, citations per paper, FWCI. The ones that I've yet to talk about will be outputs and top quartile, usage capture, social media, and mentions. This fall under alternate metrics. At a journal level, there is site score, there is SCImago journal rank, and SNP. Journal impact factor is leveraged on by Web of Science. So one thing which I would encourage all of you to do, because we talk about metrics, right? And what you want to do is you want to have a balanced, multivariate view with regard to this. So we always encourage you to use both qualitative as well as quantitative input in your decision. So you're able to leverage from the strengths of both approaches, and combining both will give you closer to the whole research perspective, and you're able to get valuable insights from different points as well. And when you use more than one research metric as the quantitative input, you realize the strengths can complement the weakness of others, and there are many ways of being excellent. So we talk about research metrics and how they can analyze the strength of research at the institution. You can identify where research is a good potential funding perspective. You're able to identify rising stars amongst early career researchers or rising trends and topics. And all in all, you'll be able to tell a better narrative that's happening with regards to research itself, right? So research metrics are very strong because they allow you to prioritize reading. They showcase where you may want to publish in, how you can add to online researcher profiles, how it can enrich your own P&T portfolio, your promotion and tenureship, how librarians can leverage on this to develop and to strengthen their collections, and to benchmark a collection of research outputs. So this is something that you may want to take a look at, and I think it's very impactful and it's very powerful. This is something which I really like, and I think I haven't really had a chance to really tell people more about this, right? So it's very easy to just list down facts, right? We're all very good at listing down facts. I've done this, right? But sometimes what you want to do is to be able to tell this into a story. So for instance, if my work has 17 citations, 9 Twitter mentions, 125 Mendeley bookmarks, and 2 blog mentions, sure, I can put this down in the list. But I could also explain this and to put it into more context, right? So if I have 17 citations for this paper, it's actually top 5% in the economics research within Scopus. It can be mentioned, bookmarked, or viewed in 40 countries according to source X. So it demonstrates international impact. It can also be shown that this paper has been covered by over 10 media outlets worldwide, including the BBC and the Wall Street Journal. You can find that this is recommended in the economic research blogs, and it has been described in tweets by this prominent researcher as a significant step forward in terms of understanding as well, right? So you'll be able to find all this information, and it's actually very powerful and impactful for you to know, right? You notice that the entire tone has changed. It's not just only about listing facts and data, but you're able to put a perspective as to how your research has contributed. So one thing we should talk about earlier was site score, and I want to give you a very clear overview as to how it's being calculated. So site score is always been calculated in the 4-year block, right? So site score 2020 would count the citations received in 2017 to 2020 to articles, reviews, conference papers, book chapters, and data papers published in 2017 to 2020, divided by the number of publications published in 2017 to 2020. Site score 2021 is about to come out in a couple of months, in a couple of months actually, and we'll be able to see that this will be from 2018 to 2021 data. And this is really how it looks like. So you'll be able to see the metrics that I talked about earlier in terms of site score, SJR, and SNP over here. We can find over at this journal level, the coverage years to present, the publisher, the ISSN, the subject area, and the source type. Over here, you can see more information, including the site score tracker for 2021, the rank and trend, as well as the content coverage. So one of my absolute favorites, right, will be the site score rank and trend, because now you're able to take into perspective how well this journal has been performing in relation to others. So for instance, Lancet is ranked, has a site score of 91.5, which is really high, significantly higher than its other peers, right? So second would be New England Journal of Medicine, then it's Nature Review Disease, and then the Lancet Global Health, Journal of the American Medical Association, for instance. But we notice that this is still ranked in the 99th percentile in terms of all the journals, the 793 journals that are in the same category. So sometimes people will be looking to say publish in journals, right? And Most of the time, you're looking for quartile 1 and quartile 2 journals. So it's actually very simple. It's 793 divided by 4, right? And that in this case, you're actually able to get quartiles. So the ones that you're looking at is probably in the 397 journals and above. Of course, Scopus gives you a very strong tool to compare sources. So if you select compare sources, you can choose the journals and then you can compare them accordingly to one another by publication, site score publication, by SJL, by SNP, by citations, by documents, right? You can see all these volume counts in terms of a journal comparison to one another. One of my favorites is the percent not cited. It showcases the percentage of a journal in which none of the documents are cited. So if you're an early career researcher, you may want to choose a journal with a low percent not cited score, right? Because it just means that in this case, it just means that everyone reads that journal, everyone's actually citing that journal, all the articles in that journal, right? And it means that your work is probably more prominent or placed in a better platform. So just multiple perspectives of consideration as you publish. So in summary, right, how do metrics help? It's not about all metrics or no metrics at all. It's not a black list or white list. It's not so straightforward. But one thing which we do is that metrics can provide data points on where you can build an expert opinion to go deeper with outliers, right? They are not a replacement for human judgment. Universities very clearly, especially at UITM, have adopted metrics and tools because we value objective, normalized, universal information, which enables meaningful comparisons. They're not the antithesis of peer review for sure, and bibliometrics would incorporate decisions made by the peer review. And first and foremost, at the end of the day, it's very important for you to first define the questions which you're asking, and then see which metrics support you in answering these questions. So the other one which I want to cover with you on is article level metrics. This one is really good. I think it's super important because they are comprehensive item level metrics that showcase insights into the way that you can interact with individual pieces of research output. Remember the earlier topic that I say showcase about how impactful that specific researcher was, especially in the area of economics and how it's being consumed by global media? This is how you can do it via PlumX, right? This visualizes scholarly engagement and it showcases 5 categories of metrics under usage, captures, mentions, social media, as well as citations. 5 very broad categories. So under PlumX itself, when you select into it, you'll be able to find out what is the usage of it, how many times it's been clicked and downloaded and played, how many times it's been captured, how many times it's been mentioned in blog posts or Wikipedia, how many times it's been trending on Twitter, on Facebook, and what is the total number of citations, right, that's been recorded. PlumX is a very powerful way for you to do so, showcases an engagement without a score. Like over here, it's kind of like a 5-leaf clover, as I like to put it. So another way that Scopus is very powerful is that it provides you with an engine to search for collaborators. So for instance, if you look for, say, key abstract words here, such as Islamic studies, you'll be able to go quickly into it. You can select the institution that are strong in this. You may even select the authors who are very prominent in this. And this is one way that you may want to actually start looking for collaborators. So I have powered through Scopus very quickly because of the apps, primarily due to the lack of time. But let me showcase and to go back one more time into a live view so that you'll be able to see, showcase, and explore this as well. So give me 1 second. Once again, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so remember just now earlier we talked about monkeypox? Let's click on the search analyze tool that you see on the top left corner over here. And then I can simply browse through it and I can see that there's a Professor Ihibiazu as well as a Professor McCollum, right? But let's take a quick look at this and to see who these authors are by opening them in new tabs as well. And then I can just get information about this. So this first researcher is based over in the Nigeria Center for Disease Control with a H index of 26 with about 149 documents. So over here, right, let's take a quick look at the topics that he or she has been working on as well. We can see that the first one actually very strongly is in terms of monkeypox, followed by the Lassa virus, followed by Ebola fever, as well as meningococcosis and serotype, right? So when you take a look at this, let's take a look at Ebola. So these are the representative documents within the field itself. We can see that these are the top authors in the topic itself. When I select here, these are the researchers who are very, very prominent in terms of Ebola itself, right? Sorry, apologies. With X number of papers. So what you can do is you can even open this in a new tab to find out about who the top producers in these topics are. So Gary Cobbinger's the University of Manitoba over at Winnipeg in Canada. When I select this over here, we can see that he has published about 68 documents with a H index of 1.38. He's also very active in terms of Zika virus as well, right? So let's take another look at Qiu Xiangguo. Who's also in the University of Manitoba at Winnipeg. And then it's very clear in this case to me that the two of them are very strong collaborators. This researcher has a H index of 40. So in the other meantime, for under monkeypox, we can see under Andrea McCollum is actually in the National Center for Emerging and Zoonotic Infectious Diseases over in Atlanta in the United States with a H index of 23 and 69 documents. We can see these are the areas of focus. In this case, Andrea is actually very active specifically with regards to monkeypox. So he or she will be the subject matter expert in this area. So there's some ways that when you're actually searching for results, you'll be very quickly and very promptly be able to delve into who the subject matter experts are. You can select by under affiliation, which faculty is strong for each of these research areas as well, right? The Center for Diseases and Prevention, that will have the most number of papers as well. So all this information, right, you can really just browse through all this. And if you're looking for funding sponsors, you can find that the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases has published the most the most research in this area of topic as well. So let's take a look at one more researcher. In this case is Satish Kumar Payampali. So this researcher has been active since 2008, published about 53 documents, H index of 12, right? So put it this way. So the other thing that I want to encourage you to do is if you find that you as a researcher, you are missing your paper, you can simply select edit profile here. I'm assuming I am for today's experiment. I'm Professor Satish Kumar. This is my profile. I want to continue. Only one profile can be associated with an account. Then I can keep the current association and I can continue with it. And then you can select the affiliation here. You can select your preferred name. You can select the type of documents that you're looking at here. You can either remove it if you feel that it's incorrect, or you can search for missing documents as well, right? In this case, Professor Satish Kumar is probably an expert in terms of Ebola. I want to add in, for instance, maybe this article. I can edit the profile here. But one thing which is really cool is that you can see over here, one of them is over here, this would be the list of authors that have been listed. So you got to select your author name to link it accordingly, right? So maybe I'll select this, I'll add the document accordingly. And then you can review the one change. You can select if whether or not you want to proceed or otherwise. I will not proceed because this is purely example, right? But we can see over here, it's actually very simple for you to make these changes, especially if you find that there's a wizard. Well, if there's a missing article from your profile itself. So the other thing that I want to showcase to you in a live demo would be how you can browse for journals by sources. So sometimes I only want to look for titles in the first quartile. I can just select it over here and I can apply the changes. Then another thing that I may want to do is to choose it by subject area. Maybe I'll choose medicine. I can even choose different types of health professions, right? Because it's very specific. It's also under immunology and microbiology. Maybe I want to select immunology and I apply it here. So right now, what I've seen is 87 results under, well, from this area of immunology, as well as rheumatology and microbiology to be ranked over here. But now that I've identified a couple of journals, I want to take a look at it. So Nature Reviews Immunology is published by Springer Nature from 2001 to present. We find that the site score in 2020 was 53.9. We have a live tracker in 2021 where it showcases this is 70.3, which is really high. And when I take a look at the rank score, the ranking comparison, I'll be able to see that these are the top journals accordingly in immunology that I may be interested in publishing, right? And it's very simple. In this case, the top 101 journals will be in the first two quartiles. So this is a good and prompt and easy way for you to identify journals to publish in. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing the live view because I think we've covered quite actively. So at this point, I'm going to ask if anyone has any questions. So Professor Madhya, let me know if there's any questions that you'd like me to tackle for the time being.
Okay, Patrick, there's actually a few questions that is being asked. Okay, let me actually read you question from our librarian. Okay, hi Nick, can you explain the Boolean operator and its importance in literature search? That's the first question. You answer it first, then I read another question.
Sure, please. So
Okay.
the first question in terms of Boolean operator and importance in literature search, the reason why I went through it is because over in Scopus, right, we have about 18.5 million items. So Boolean operators would actually really help in terms of narrowing down the search parameters, right? Because for instance, if I were to run a search on COVID-19, and you can type in COVID-19 in Scopus right now, you find that you get about over hundreds of thousands of searches. Sometimes you want to be very specific with how you want to structure it. So if you're using multiple variables of n, for instance, you will be able to limit it down and to narrow the focus down specifically to what you're looking for too. So I think that's actually very useful as well, right? Because there's a lot of information to go through. You have finite amount of time, right? So you want to actually adopt a very efficient way of searching so that it makes your life easier. So I would say that's probably its importance.
Okay. Another question. Can we have the contact numbers of the co-authors directly in Scopus?
Unfortunately not. You cannot have the contact number in that case. What I would suggest you can do is to search for their profile and to reach out to them via email. That's probably the more ethical approach.
Okay. Okay, question from live chat. In addition, the publisher sometimes asking me to act as a reviewer for their journals that listed in Scopus Index. I'm not sure, should I be the reviewer to the publisher? Any advice?
So this is actually a very good question, and I would say this is actually quite nuanced. So at the end of the day, I would say first and foremost, you need to know who the publisher is and who it is that they're approaching you, right? If you're not certain, you can take a look at their body of work, the journals that they've published, etc. The other thing you can also do is to take a look at the journals that this publisher has published in Scopus, and you can see how well their journals are performing, right? At the same time, and I would say always be confident in yourself. Sometimes you're asked to be a reviewer, a peer reviewer, because it's clear to them, this publisher, that your body of work has made you an expert in your field to do the peer review for this research, so you can be confident in it. But at the same time, if you feel that the publisher is a bit suspicious or suspect, feel free to decline, right? It's not an obligation to do so. What I would say at the end of the day is you should do your own due diligence to ascertain the credibility of the publisher, and then you can make your decision from that. But I also encourage you to be confident in your work. Usually when people step forward to approach you to be a peer reviewer, it really showcases that you've really put in your dues and you've really demonstrated your mettle as a researcher in your profession.
Okay, and another one question. How do I search multiple keywords in Scopus?
So this is actually where it ties back into the Boolean operator, right? So you can, it's very straight. I would say that this is where you can put in a keyword and another keyword and another keyword. Sometimes you might want to put that in the different fields, right? Maybe sometimes what you want to do is to search for COVID-19 and then and Malaysia. And then maybe if you know a couple of authors in Malaysia who are experts in the field, you can search for them in the author drop down selection as well, right? So you have title, abstract keywords, you have title, you also have institution as well as author. You can combine all this together using Boolean operators, or you can just simply search it, do it via search on scopus.com itself.
Okay. Any other question from the audience? We still got about 2 minutes to go before 10:30, before we end our session.
So if we have a quick 2 minutes, I can quickly run you through something that me and my colleague are currently doing. This is what we call the Malaysia Scopus Consortium webinars that we have been running through. We've been doing this for some time now. Last year we did approximately 6 to 7 across the whole of Malaysia. This year we're doing the same because we realized that there's very huge demand for them. The first session that was over will be on author profiles, the first two. We have an upcoming session on research metrics in Scopus, understanding citations, H-index, and PlumX. We have an upcoming one on journals, conferences, and books in Scopus and how you can find the best ones for yourself. We have one on preprints, topics, funding acknowledgements in Scopus and how you can use this information, and another on United Nations SDGs and how you can find relevant data. There's additional information, right? And I'll point you towards the twitter.com and blog.scopus. We also have a very strong center for support, which is the Scopus Support Hub. And I really like that because this is a place where you can go to type in all the questions. It's very straightforward. All you have to do is go to Google and type in Scopus Support Hub, and you'll be able to be directed to this page. And then over here, we'll be able to support you with many questions as possible. If you have any questions at any point in time, feel free to reach out to your customer consultants, myself, as well as Sander, he's my colleague, and together we support UITM together. So thank you very much. I think today's session was very helpful. It was great. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, and it's always a pleasure to work together and to collaborate with UITM.
We don't have any more questions from the audience. Thank you very much, Mr. Nicholas Park, for the very interesting and very informative sharing session today. We actually hope we can actually collaborate in the future with Scopus. And I think the session today actually give us some additional information, and some of the question asked is actually being addressed by you, and I hope that everybody is actually clear about their concern which relate to Scopus. And I think Puan Hafiza, do we need to actually announce about the quiz that we have or later? Because I think our session with Mr. Nicholas Park is actually already announced in okay. I think we actually have quizzes, Mr. Nicholas, and I think they have actually announced the winner in the chat room. Thank you very much for your participant today, Mr. Nicholas, and I hope that we can actually calibrate more in the future, maybe not only from the library, but maybe for our office, Research and Innovation Office of UITM Selangor branch, because we are actually a research campus starting this year. Thank you very much, and I think that's all from us for today's session.
I'm looking forward to work with you and to collaborate with you in the near future. And hopefully one of these days I'll be over in Malaysia and we can discuss all this together.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you. Thank you, Professor
Okay.
Mahathir.
Okay. Okay. That's all.